All right. Hello and welcome to 97.9 Unity Radio, the best sports show in all of Worcester, Massachusetts, in all of Massachusetts, Central Massachusetts, Eastern, Western, Connecticut, Vermont, New Hampshire. Let's go with all of New England, I think. And I am the best podcast host in the universe and radio host in the universe, Steve Cully. With me, as always, the man to my left, the coach, David Schumann. It's always great when I get to see you three times in a day.
Three times.
I know. And then for the first time ever appearing solo, we don't have to share a space. The voice of reason himself, Frank Cristiano.
It's like I've been freed from jail.
Yes, you're free from jail. And we have a very special guest, former UConn teammate of mine turned successful comedian who's all the way out in Hollywood. Well, he's in California, but he's the man himself. Mike Sasson.
Mike, how you guys doing tonight?
We are wonderful. We are wonderful.
Yeah, you guys were talking about getting snowed in. Yeah, it was 72 and sunny today. I didn't want to mention that. Keep it quiet. Keep it quiet.
As you would expect, Sasson's got the best microphone. You know what I mean? I mean, as soon as he started talking, either he's got the voice of a Hollywood star, or he's just got the best microphone by far.
He's got his own podcast. He's out there in front of people, man. He does it all.
Steve, let me ask this now. So you're a comedian, professional comedian?
Yes.
That's what you do. No. So I was a comedy club owner for over 5 years. Awesome. I had a little small place up in central New York called Fat Cats Comedy Club.
Okay.
So bottom line, and dealing with comedians over the years, I guess my one question is, how much do you really, truly enjoy the road life?
I mean, obviously, it's good and bad. I'll be completely honest with you. I don't do a ton of road stuff out here in Los Angeles. I do more stuff at the Improv, the Comedy Store, stuff like that here in Los Angeles. That's one of the benefits of being in a bigger city, that I can get enough spots here and everything. Do a little bit of acting, not a ton. But that's where but I have ventured out into. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and so did a lot of stuff when I was in Pittsburgh, out in Ohio, West Virginia, parts of Maryland, up to more Buffalo, Western New York. So did stuff there. In terms of enjoying it, there's always kind of a thing of being "quote unquote" a road comic. And what that means in terms of your act and everything. So obviously there's always going to be a discussion on what is the best path to becoming a success. Some say, if you plant in New York or in LA, you're seen more. Whereas obviously if you go on the road, then you kind of, obviously a way to make a career and make a living, but also you're not, You sometimes you can get a little lost in the grand scheme of the entertainment industry if you do that.
Yeah, I guess my recollections are kind of all over the place. Like, for example, in the early days, in the early 2000s when I first had it, Joey Diaz was a regular for me. So Joey on the Joe Rogan podcast, and Joe's all over the place. So I would actually have to go drive to the Ramada Inn where we put him in and wake him up after an all-night bender, so he could actually get to the stage on time. So I'm looking at how does a guy survive? How does that road life work, where every weekend he's in a different city basically, and he's killing. Yeah, I had Charlie Murphy. Yeah, but they're killing themselves in a way, for sometimes for $1,200. You know what I mean?
Well, Joey's a Marine. I have people who are friends with him. He's as tough as they come.
Yeah,
I have a lot of good friends who are close to him. I mean, we didn't necessarily cross paths, but it's like everything else. It's like the 6 degrees of separation. I know of a lot of people who are very good friends with Joey before he moved back east. He moved back east around the pandemic. He had been out here in LA for a lot of years. But I mean, he literally, the best way I could describe him is he was just just a bad man. He was you have to have that kind of warrior mentality if you're going to do that. Because like you said, it's now everyone always has the magical stories about quote unquote the comedy boom of the 1980s. When you hear the stories from the old timers where literally an MC would do 10 minutes up front and make $1,200, that kind of money. And then by the time the 90s kind of bailed out and everything, now it's an interesting kind of world because you've got guys that they become internet celebrities before they're actually got the chops in terms of comedy. You have got a lot of guys that can fill rooms up who barely have 10, 15 minutes of material. So that's where we are right now. And then the other thing is what's become big is like the 15-second or 20-second clip of what they call crowd work, which means you don't do material, you do crowd work, and that's and you do that so you don't burn through your material, and then you get famous through that. So social media is a great tool, but it also can be a curse because somebody sits there and says, "Oh, I know that guy," and then you go see him at a comedy club and you realize about 15 minutes in, "Oh, this guy doesn't have an act."
Totally true. That's one of the better breakdowns I've heard. That was a good one, Mike. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know how most of these guys do. It's crazy, and for the amounts they get paid. The thing is, I had a club I had two clubs. One sat 200 and one sat 100. So bottom line, what could I make? I couldn't charge a high-end ticket where I am. I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But we brought up some great acts. I loved it. I love that life. It wasn't profitable enough after a while. The peaks and valleys are too big. Too many highs, too many lows. But I ran through some great people over the years. So it kind of near and dear to my heart when
nowadays are corporate.
Yeah, I mean, you're right.
It's levity. It's it's the improv. It's Laugh Factory. It has become something of obviously there's some other chains like the Funny Bone all over the country and stuff. And so that's kind of how that it becomes a feeder system. And if you could get into that feeder system, then you can get a lot of weekends and things like that. And and that's if you can get to a point where you're a national touring headliner. And also the other thing, comedy and certain things, it seems like some people almost jump the line to go from, kind of somewhat known to theaters. And then once you're in a theater, now you're making gigantic money kind of deal. Yeah, so it's an interesting way to do it.
For almost 3 years, I had Jimmy Fallon at my club. I had him 6 different times in my club. So now he's out of touch. The radio station here who brought him in initially and didn't want to give him anything. Now all of a sudden he's doing that 800, 1,200 in a theater. So it hits, and he's got a national presence now on Fox. But yeah, guys like that are the ones that really, but there's so few and far between the guys that actually make money and the guys that are just, struggling.
Your last show was Falla at the Stanley, right?
At the Stanley Theater. Yeah, I put him up at the Stanley Theater. Yeah, we did 800 people there. Yep.
So
I'm sorry, this is a sports talk show. I'm just going off on comedy now. I apologize.
Well, all I can tell you is stand-up can be a contact sport as well. And there's more people get CTE that way than football nowadays. So yeah,
absolutely. The verbal CTE is huge.
Yeah, there's some post-traumatic stress. Absolutely.
Yep. Well, if you want to see if a girl really likes you, go on a date with her to a comedy club. And if you're I found that if I was laughing, I turned around and she wasn't laughing, I knew that wasn't going to work out. So you go to a comedy club, pretty quick if you're in a relationship that's going to work out.
There's no such thing as a pure meritocracy. There's no such thing as fair because it is life, but it is the fairest thing because you can walk out of the room and someone could just look at you and just be like, "Well, how did you do?" You just point to the room. You're like, that's my proof.
Yep.
There's no discussion. Did everyone laugh? Yes. Then I did well. If nobody laughed, then I was terrible.
That's right.
No doubt.
Yeah, and he's pretty good for the most part. He's hilarious. He's been doing it for a while. But Dave, I had wanted to start by asking you because you had brought this up a while ago. I was looking at the NCAA basketball standings, and you mentioned how the NIL money could be trickling down, especially in the SEC. Auburn's number 1, and I looked at the top 25. There's 8 SEC schools in the top 25 right now, and I'm there's 9. Wow, I'm shocked.
Steve, it's funny you say that. Today, I just did for our Husky hoops coming up, and then when is that, Wednesday?
Yeah,
I just did both men's and women's. I did a spreadsheet and a pie chart, and that's how.
Oh, you're going to give it to Joe? That's nice.
That's how much of a loser I am. But yeah, you're good. Ask your question, and I think
that's what I'm asking. Do you think it's a result of the NIL money trickling down?
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. Look on. I think on the women's side, it's 7 SEC teams. So in the top 25, I think it's 9 in the top 25 men. And then the SEC is 7. And then I think the Big East women is 2 and men was 4. And we're not in it, obviously. No, so and then the other ones that I was a little surprised because the Big Ten didn't have that many. It may just be that they're a little off this year. But they only had 4 or 5, I think, in the top 25. But women was different. But like Big 12 is doing pretty well in men and women, and ACC, which used to be the most dominant, right? Right. It had, I think, 5 or 4 or 5.
Duke was the highest, I think.
Yeah, Duke's. Duke you would expect, but I think NIL is a big deal. I think NIL is the long and the short of it is NIL and transfer portal combined have a huge effect, and Auburn is the biggest beneficiary of it because you have Bruce Pearl, who is a legendary basketball recruiter. I mean, he's a great basketball coach, but if you could bend the rule, and break it sometimes, Bruce Pearl. But now he doesn't have to break it.
No.
Well, there's no more breaking of the rules. Everything. It's weird. It's like they took the NIL money they should have spent on football, and now they're going to basketball because they were terrible this year in football. Now they're taking their revenge.
And Bruce Pearl's smart. He's a smart, crafty New Yorker. So he knows how to get the money and schmooze the donors. And he did well at Tennessee, but that was back when there were still some rules, and he got in trouble. Yes. He had. My sister was an assistant AD at Tennessee when Bruce Pearl. She loved Bruce Pearl. She said he was amazing, but Bruce Pearl, she said, was always on on the boat. Women on the boat. He was a wild guy, we did whatever he had to do to make sure the players were coming there. But now that there's no rules and money, and or limited rules, and the transfer portal is a big thing, which he's done really well in. And then, NIL. And most of the SEC has done really well. Who would have thought that Ole Miss would be
That's what I saw.
A top 25 basketball team? I mean, Ole Miss.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, but Dave, so Dave, let me ask you a question. Is St. John's an anomaly? I watched last night. There's St. John's in Creighton. I didn't know St. John's was 21-4.
They have big money.
22-4.
They have huge NIL money.
Huge NIL money. Okay.
So they took Seton Hall's best player from last year, who was like Shaheen Holloway's big recruit. Took him big because they paid him more. I mean, Pitino said it. He said that he paid his guy more, and that's why he has him.
And Mike, I know we talked about this a little bit on our Husky Talk. You have some thoughts on the NIL and the transfer portal. I mean, it's
the greatest thing in the history of the world. Yes, it's wonderful. These players for years were undervalued. Most of these guys were getting something, but it was not actually what they were worth. Now they're getting what they're worth. You think about a school like St. John's having now the ability to sell out Madison Square Garden. Yeah, the kid who's going to sell out Madison Square Garden deserves to be well compensated because the guy the next night who plays for the Knicks, he's selling out Madison Square Garden and he's going to be well compensated. So my thing with the rule, everyone now knows what you need to do. Okay. The ACC right now is the one that I think we really need to kind of delve into, because North Carolina is putting all its influence right now, it looks like, into football by getting Bill Belichick. Virginia, that won a national championship a couple years ago, lost their coach. Remember when like Pitt and Syracuse would be up there? They're completely off. I don't even know if they have basketball programs anymore. I don't know what the heck they're doing. Everyone needs to know what you got to do. Forget your arena, forget facilities, forget anything. You go up to your boosters, you sit there and say, I need this amount of money, and you go get a big name head coach who knows how to get kids into the NBA, and then you can get good, real quick. Can you imagine a world, and you want to talk about SEC money, a world where you would have said 5 years ago the head coach of Kentucky was going to leave Kentucky and go to Arkansas because he'd have a better chance to win because they have more NIL, more money to pay players, and everyone knows that's why he left. Calipari left literally the bluest of the blue bloods to go to Arkansas because he knew he had a better chance to win because of NIL, and I have no problem with it.
Mike, you know what's so funny too? Because I see it, and I just saw it the other night with the Notre Dame basketball coach crying, not crying, but like, people aren't behind us. I don't know if you saw it, like wait till we turn it around. I'm like, turning it around. He lost last year. He lost this year. All you got to do is get the. I mean, look what Notre Dame football has done. Get the money that you need and go get the players that you need. And I guess some of them can't figure out who are the good players too. That might be part of it, right? Like, who am I giving money to? Because I don't know if this guy's better than that guy. That's on them as a coach. But
that's one of the most interesting things that's happening right now out here in Los Angeles. USC has completely redone their football staff. They have basically put in an NFL pro personnel department.
Yeah,
they have legit put in millions into that for exactly what you just described. It's one thing to have the money. It's another thing to actually know who to give the money to. So what you're going to start seeing is the same thing you see in the NFL. Defensive linemen, pass rushers, quarterbacks, they're going to get paid. Wide receivers, dime a dozen. They're not going to get paid unless you're special. And also in basketball, if you're a Cooper Flag, then you'll get paid. But if you're not going to be an immediate help, if you're not going to be a guy that is going to be able to help them in year one, then you're not going to get paid. You're going to have to go prove yourself at a MAC school or a low Big East school or something like that. That's basically what the kid did from Seton Hall. That's now at St. John's. He went to Seton Hall. He proved that he could play Big East basketball. Then he opens it up and says, okay, who wants to win next year? Oh, I just have to go across the Hudson River? Great, fine. I'll go play for you. No loyalty, no anything like that. It's the same thing as if a guy left for the Nets to go from the Knicks because basically they're paying him more. Same thing.
Voice of reason. You can chime in.
I'm just thinking about it right now in my head. I'm thinking of like Arch Manning, right? Like Arch Manning was the guy who, granted that was more pedigree than anything else. He had great crazy high school stats, but bottom line, he didn't get a chance to prove anything, but he got the money right away, and now he's got even more money now. I think is he number one or number two as far as NIL? I know he's up there as far as either 1, 2, or 3.
Carson Beck and Underwood,
he's under him. Beck's under him. I think Arch Manning has like $6.4 million a year in NIL.
Beck is $8 million.
$8 million. So Beck's got him. Yeah.
Underwood is going to get $10 million to go to Michigan, and he's only a freshman. So
there's a case where Arch really stepped on the field for a few games so far for Texas, but there's a case where he just the name carried him and got him the money right away too. But I'm with Mike. Hey, listen, open it up. Let the kids get paid. I feel bad for, the fifth starter on a basketball team or the guys on the bench. What are they going to be getting? Little, if nothing. But, hey, it is what it is. If you have the talent, you get paid for it.
Well, one thing that I think you're going to start seeing is if you really look at it, the SEC has made an agreement with ESPN, which is Disney. And what does Disney want to do if it wants to make a big movie? It goes and gets a big star and pays for it. And then Fox, that's News Corp. That's a big company. What do they do if they want to make a big movie for Fox? They go out and they find a star and they pay for it. Arch Manning, in the Arch Manning of 5 or 10 years from now, it might not even be some local, recruiter for Texas. It'll be Disney. It'll be Fox, because these are television programs. These are programs for major networks that are trying to sell advertising. They are going to be the ones that are going to sit there and go up to these young men and sit there and say, okay, the battle is, are you going to go into the Fox camp or are you going to go in the Disney camp? And that's where you're going to start seeing some numbers that are going to make these numbers look like nothing.
So then there has to be a cap then at some point, or else it's just going to be sky's the limit.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think that we've talked about this. I don't think
here's where
they open Pandora's box.
I think what you're going to see, this is going to be attempted. I don't know if it'll succeed, but what's going to be attempted is they're going to take this TV revenue money, in-house, disperse it accordingly, do a terrible job of it. I'm sure of it. Unless you're let me rephrase. UConn will do a terrible job of it because they will not get it to the right groups. But hopefully they don't. But Alabama will do a good job of it. They will get it to who they think should get it. And because of Title IX, the groups that are really, really worried about Title IX, as far as fair and creating that in fair pay, are going to disperse it more evenly, which is going to – players are going to choose – the best players are going to choose where the most money is going to come to them. So it's important for teams in college to, when they take the money that comes in-house, which is the TV money, to disperse it accordingly, because what's going to happen is you just know the SEC teams, and some of these big teams
contract the SEC.
And even West Coast and East Coast teams who really want to win, like USC, for example, they want to win. Like put like what their political views are aside, they want to win. They want to win championships. So they're going to disperse the money that way, and then you're going to have outside money, right? And see, that's the thing you're not going to be able to control, which is what Mike's talking about. So you can attempt to control the inside money that comes in. You're not going to be able to control the outside money, because the second you try to control it, Mike Sasson Inc. says he wants to give $10 million as player, and you say, no, we can't do that. If a group of those teams, let's say the SEC, they will form their own organization, and they will make sure that the players can get whatever they want. So that's
or Dave, how about this? These kids have agents.
Right,
that means that if you start messing with their money, it's lawsuits.
Right.
That's the thing. They get 10% of these kids' revenue. So guess what? Right. That kid who signed a $10 million deal, there's somebody who got 10 to 20% of that. You start messing with his money, that's when you're going to face a lawsuit. And that's when the only way you're going to get what you call a quote unquote a cap is if the SEC basically sits there and says, okay, the SEC, the maximum you can give for your football program is, I'm just making a number up, $30 million.
Right.
That's the only way you could do it, because then it becomes almost like a gentleman's agreement. But the problem is, if the Big Ten the next year says, okay, ours is $35 million, then the SEC's teams start to, cry to each other. Now we're at a competitive disadvantage, all this other kind of stuff. So the problem, the NCAA should have sat down 10 years ago and negotiated a settlement and negotiated something fair to where they could have had a cap, to where this could have been looked at and organized. Instead, they dug their heels in. They sat there and said, no, we're going to keep this archaic system as long as humanly possible. And because of it, they got completely crushed in court. Like anybody who knows anything about law knew that was going to happen. And now it's Katie bar the door, too much money at stake. I don't know if you guys heard today, they're already announcing, or they're talking about expanding the college football playoff to 14 teams or to 16 teams starting in 2026. There's why is that? It'll take more revenue to play players, more revenue to play coaches. All of this is exploding because the NCAA wouldn't sit down 10 years ago and actually organize this thing.
Playoff football will be like all the other subdivisions. It'll be like from Division 1 AA down. And they'll go to 32 teams, or how many of them are. They'll expand it as far as they can because the money is huge. What I'm dealing with right now after this whole conversation, I'm in mourning because as you three, I also played a little college football, and I think I was born 35 years too late. Or too early, I should say, because right now we're missing out on a whole bunch of money that's out there.
Yeah, well, the agreement, the television agreement with ESPN ends in 2026. So that's why I'm sure they're looking to expand it. And there technically is a cap on the television money right now. It's
Right.
22 million.
Right.
But the only conference that makes that kind of money is the SEC.
SEC, yeah.
Well, the 20 million then just becomes your floor, because then you go to your boosters and you're sitting there going, okay, everyone, Vanderbilt gets 20 million, Ole Miss gets 20 million, Mississippi State gets 20 million. Well, if we're LSU, then we add another 20 million. And then it becomes, and this is where your quote unquote, your general manager is going to become more important than anything else, is because with that, your head coach, like, again, I've used USC as an example. Lincoln Riley now completely almost doesn't have, he's almost like an NFL coach who more or less says, hey, I'll show up the first day and figure out who my team is. I have input, but I don't have, I don't send the pick in. I don't have final call. And basically that's what's going to happen, because they're going to say, okay, we don't trust you with this 20, 30, 40 million. Whereas when we all grew up, the guy who was the final say of who got a scholarship was the head coach. You're now going to see these teams become essentially put in NFL, structures because of the money, because these guys know what they're doing.
And what it becomes too is, and what makes it really interesting. So the NFL has a monopoly, right? Because of the franchises they have all under their system. The way the structure they set up everything, and no one could compete with it.
Well, they have an antitrust exemption, yes.
Well, I'm saying no one could compete with it. You start a pro league tomorrow. You can't compete with that. I mean, okay, so they have a monopoly in how they're able to handle the cap and all those kind of things. College football is not like that, because you have SEC, which is one organization. You have ACC, another organization. You have Big Ten, another organization. You have Big 12, another organization, so on and so forth, right? So each one of these organizations that these schools are a part of, quote unquote franchises that they're a part of that group, and everybody that stays in that group is in agreement under the structure that they want it to be in. But you can see if they don't like it, they jump to a different system, different conference, right? A competing conference, right? But what allows that to happen is, for the players, because there's multiple conferences that can compete at the highest level, in for the most part, the top 4 or so conferences are able to compete with each other. You allow the players now to be able to get paid a lot more. It's like having 4 NFLs. It's like having 4 NFL pro teams, where if the NFL said we're going to have this is the cap for our teams, and then there was actually a competing franchise in pro football along with that, and they said, well, no, we'll make our cap higher. So, that's what you have in college football, which is what allows the players to essentially, if you're a quarterback, and this is like 2 or 3, maybe less years away. As soon as these guys figure this out, I think they're starting to, but they're like, wait a minute, why? Like when Larry Ellison paid, when Dave Portnoy said, I want to give $3 million, we don't want Bryson Underwood leaving the state. He's going to LSU. We don't want him going to LSU. Whatever LSU's giving, I'm going to give $3 million toward it. And then Larry Ellison's wife, who's a Michigan alum, who his 4th wife, and he's supposed to keep her happy, and he's worth $250 billion. She says, can you help Michigan? He says, okay. What do you need? $7 million more, $10 million. Okay, fine. And can we pay all the players above and beyond what they're getting, $150K? Okay, great. Done. I mean, this is a drop in the bucket for him. He's worth $250 billion. It's $10 million.
Yeah, he has that in his couch cushions. It doesn't mean anything. Yeah, he checks his ashtray in his Bentley. He's got that. Yeah, that's nothing. That's just that's like when a rich guy opens a dress shop in his hometown so his wife has something to do during the day. Yeah, we all know what that is. Now the thing is, I think you're going to see 2 things happening. One, a guy like an Ellison or a guy like that is going to go up to the big ones, Bama, Penn State, Notre Dame, the ones that really push the TV numbers, and you talk about having multiple NFLs. If someone were to put together the quote unquote Super League to where it would be organized by geography, would be organized with television, be able to reach out to multiple television networks, start going international, all this kind of stuff. The issue always then comes is the simple fact of the matter is will the public follow this? Because it's like for years, the thing that made college football special was, we always had in the back of our minds that the guy who played for the Steelers really wasn't for Pittsburgh. He was a guy who was drafted there and he's making money. And when they're facing the Ravens, they're just two professionals basically performing something as an entertainment entity. But college, it was an Ohio kid, loves Ohio, goes to Ohio State, and then a Michigan kid goes to Michigan, and it's a Michigan-Ohio State, and they wouldn't say the state's names and all that other kind of good stuff. But once it becomes something to where it is just essentially another NFL, will the public follow? Will the public? Because like you're sitting there saying, if you're just watching, Syracuse versus UConn, and you're like, well, wait a minute, Syracuse versus UConn or Knicks versus Lakers, there's no difference. It's just basically one has an orange, logo on the shirt, and the other one has a blue logo on the shirt. What am I actually watching other than just basically semi-pro or some amalgam of it?
Well, to contradict that a little bit, bottom line, these major colleges have tens of thousands of graduates who have allegiances to those schools. So bottom line, they're that allegiance to that school, up in the North, we don't understand sports.
No, we don't.
The South, and even the West, they understand sports. Yeah. They have allegiances. They have ties.
It does even USC, UCLA. They get it.
They have bloodlines. There are bloodlines that from school to school where entire generations of people have gone to that school. So, I think that'll carry any numbers that you want to sell. I really do. And plus, with all this money, they're going to start marketing these kids. You're going to know who the players are on these major teams, just like that Josh Allen is a quarterback of the Bills, even if you're not a Bills fan. They're going to start marketing these kids in the right way. If that kind of money's coming out there, they can do anything.
You're already seeing it. Paige Becker was in has a Nike shoe, and she's in ESPN ads, and she's in Gatorade ads and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff's already happening. My thing is, like you talked about in terms of quote unquote the cap, I think eventually someone's going to go up to these people, because you look at each one of these conferences, they all have dead weight. They all have teams in their conferences that don't draw numbers. Okay. Vanderbilt versus Mississippi State does not draw numbers. Okay. In the Big Ten, Purdue versus, Wisconsin is not driving the numbers of an Ohio State.
What Vanderbilt did with the quarterback that they got, the transfer they got from Mexico State, is a case of where Vanderbilt, because they have so many wealthy alumni, decided that, hey, we're gonna go bring in this kid who's like 900 years old, right? And he comes over, and Vanderbilt wins 6 games.
Yeah. I'm not saying they can't put together good teams, but I'm talking from a television standpoint. If we're putting together, ultimately, the teams that drive the bus, the teams that get the eyeballs, that get the 10 to 15 million ratings. It's Michigan, it's Ohio State, it's Alabama. It's, it's a reason why, for instance, Florida State could stink for the next, 10 years. But if the ACC was going to get rated again, they would be picked over a Louisville who might actually have a better team. That was one of the frustrating parts about when UConn got left out of all this, is because for the 10 years prior to all of that happening, UConn had a competitive football team, had actually had a winning record against Syracuse and Pitt. But because of basically perception, pretty much they got left out in the cold, because the perception was the football wasn't up to snuff. And that's the same thing with, why a Florida State or a Clemson, even if nothing happens over the next 5 years, would get plucked, because when people see that spear on that helmet, they go, I'm going to watch that for 2 seconds, as opposed to watching a Boston College, gold helmet or something like that.
Yeah, and Florida State and Clemson are both suing, trying to get out of the ACC.
Because they know they're going to get left behind money-wise.
Yeah. Of course. And as I said to Frank, 5 years from now, the money that's going to be available to these colleges, it's going to be like the NFL salary cap was when it first started in 1994. They're going to have $60-70 million to work with. When's it too much?
My question is, why doesn't
Greed is good.
Why doesn't the Ivy League, the biggest endowment of all, just say, screw all this stuff? We can have the best team, get all the money, we can pay for anybody we want 7,000 times over. Forget them. We've got 10 of the richest people at Harvard, 10 of the richest people at Princeton or Yale. And they took a step to it this year, which was interesting. For the first time, the Ivy League is going to compete in the FCS playoffs. Which
they are.
Yes. And why do you think they're doing it? Because they know they can win.
They have the most money.
They're going to figure
unlimited money.
They're going to
unlimited money.
Okay, what are some of the steps we have to do? The top team's going to go in it. Okay, if we pay this guy this year, what does that look like for our team? They're dabbling in it because in the arms race of college sports, the group that has the most money, and Alabama. What was interesting about Alabama was Alabama has struggled a little bit in some of the fundraising aspects of it, because in the end, who has the richest alumni of all?
Well, it's Harvard.
The
Ivy League
schools in the country have the
But Dave, you just hit the nail on the head. Texas has oil money. Notre Dame has billionaire money.
Correct.
It's the West and the East Coast, all that kind of stuff. The guy who's the biggest booster for Alabama owns a very profitable Kia dealership in Birmingham. Okay, he doesn't have Larry Ellison money. Okay, he does okay, and so you're going to see it now. Harvard is going to pay for a quarterback so it can beat Yale. Right. That's their thing. They think it's uncouth if they would go and try to go beat Alabama. But definitely if Princeton got some 5-star quarterback who could do the grades, and now all of a sudden they beat the snot out of Harvard, you better know that there's going to be some competitive billionaire Harvard guy who's going to be like, okay, we got to find the best quarterback in the country who could potentially actually do the work scholastically at a Harvard so that we could beat Yale. Because Dave, you remember when we played Yale? Yale would always have like one tight end or one offensive lineman that would get drafted in the NFL because he wanted to go to Yale or he wanted to go to Harvard. So absolutely they could do it. And they, of course, could build facilities and build everything like that. Yeah, their endowment is the infinity symbol.
It's the infinity.
When is the NCAA, or not the NCAA, when are schools just going to say, you know what, forget about the eligibility rules. Let's just keep these kids here forever. Let's create our own league. We got the money. We got all these mega millionaires, right? We're going to load it up. We'll dip into the endowments of all these colleges, Stanford, 80 billion or whatever the hell they got. And let's just create our own league. We will dominate. We'll take over the NFL because we can keep these kids here forever. Once you sign them, as long as you keep giving them money.
You said in 5 years you think the NCAA will cease to exist, and that everyone.
I do.
Because what purpose does it serve now other than to put on championships in sports that no one watches?
Exactly.
Charlie Baker does nothing. He does.
You're telling me the only reason they exist there is to let a guy with a penis become a woman to go get a national championship in swimming. Basically, they're there to protect liberal rights.
Now that's gone.
Yeah, right. It got done. Well, Trump is out. In 4 more years, when it's a Democrat in office again, then it'll go back and he'll win again. Whatever. It's just stupid.
Think of the NIL money that person would get.
Oh my God.
Well, there's a lot of marketing there. I think if someone would have explained to Trump the marketing ability, I think he might have changed his mind.
That's right. Nancy Pelosi would donate millions to that cause.
Tell you right now, there's a lot of money. There's always a niche. There's always a place where you could find money somewhere.
That's right.
But I mean, I guess the big $100 million question we're all talking about here is where does it end? And the question really comes down to what do the universities have the stomach for? Like you stated, you're right. They have the fan base. They've got the facilities. They've got the TV networks to look at them. I mean, let's be honest. The number one entity in terms of sports in the United States is the NFL. Number two is college football. Okay.
Right.
It's not the NBA. It's not the NHL. It's not, Major League Baseball. Those are all becoming niche sports compared to those. Football is the biggest thing in the world. And you want to talk about like a competing league against the NFL? It's Division I men's, SEC, ACC, Big Ten football. That's the AFL. That's the USFL. That's
Mike,
what it is.
I think the problem with that is that there's that academia factor of universities that may hinder that, hold it back, or there may be an internal civil war because now you've got professors and students going, hey, these guys all they're doing is playing football and they're getting millions of dollars. I'm solving cancer and I'm getting nothing.
That battle has been occurring for 100 years.
Yeah,
it's that battle has been occurring. You want to talk about? I mean, Harvard and Yale used to win national championships until the academia kind of took it over. There's a reason why when we used to play at the Yale Bowl, the stadium sat 80,000 people. Mm-hmm. Only 15,000 would be in the stadium if it wasn't Harvard Yale, but their stadiums are as big or some of them in most of the teams in the Northeast. But their academia, basically, they didn't have the stomach for it. And it's the same thing that really will ultimately stop all of this. Is at what point do the presidents of these universities sit there and say, we can't have this guy just here representing our university when everyone knows that he's not a student here and he's been here for X amount of years? Or even worse, what's going to happen is he's played for 5 teams in our conference. In which case, what degree is he getting when he's been at 5 different universities in 5 years?
It's a perceived morality that the Ivy League has, right? It's really their perceived morality. Nobody else's perceived morality other than theirs. And I can tell you that, like, all it would take is a president and head of board of trustees at that university that are aligned with and just ask the fundamental question: what if we wanted to be the best in football? What could that be? And then it would be the next year. 1 year later, they would be a top 25 program.
Well, they'd have to drop their academic standards to get the kids in.
They can any school can get in whoever they want.
Absolutely.
It's the president goes out to an admissions person and says, these 25 guys are in.
Yeah.
They're
in. They would have to do that.
That's how it is. I mean, and if you think about it,
especially since Ivy League schools are private institutions, they don't have to release anything. They can literally you're right. The president and the board of trustees could sit there and say, these 25 young men have joined our are now students at Yale. Go Eli, or whatever their name was.
How do you think the Kennedys went to Harvard? So I mean, it's no different than wealthy family. To me, this is no different than a wealthy family saying, "Hey, I donate a bunch of money, and I'd like my kid to go here." Okay. And yes, my kid didn't study for 4 years in high school, but I gave you $20 million, $100 million, and my kid's going here. And I don't care what school it is, including Harvard or Yale, they are going there.
Yeah, that 620 SAT will fit.
Yeah.
That 620 SAT will fit in.
Nice people don't build buildings. That's basically what it comes down to. The names on the buildings were not nice men. That's the universal rule of life. Those were not, Carnegie Mellon, neither of those people were nice men. All right. Let's just be honest with you. But Mike, I mean, fundamentally, I think also this is still, I guess it goes back to the thing I said. It's like, we have to have at least some semblance of that these kids care a little bit, because if they become pure mercenaries, I mean, I would personally say what's going to happen, number one, is I don't understand why they haven't already started signing multi-year contracts. Yeah, fine. You're the 5-star kid. Great. We'll give you $6 million a year, but it's 3 years, $18 million. Then the other thing I can't wait to happen, because I bet you it's already happened. You think that kid that Larry Ellison paid to go to Michigan has a bad camp? Do you think the coach has any power to keep that kid out of the starting lineup when you're paying that guy $6 million a year? Yeah, right. I mean, there's a lot of things it's always been that way, that there's been politics involved about who plays, and it's not always who's the best guy. But ultimately, now you've got literally billionaires who put real money behind somebody, and they're going to go, yeah, I don't want to see this kid play. I didn't give this kid $6 million. I want to see this kid play because my wife paid him $6 million.
Well, I tell you, the comedy of it is, and we all played, so you know, there will always have been some level of politics, like whether your coach recruited you, you know, like obviously the well, you were with Holtz, and then you were with Edsel, right? So then you were an Edsel's guy, right? I was with Tom Jackson, then I was with Holtz, right? So I had to work my way back to being a guy because I wasn't a guy, right? And every coach who recruited you the one who recruited you is angling for you to play. And if you no longer have a quote unquote sponsor there, like let's say he gets fired, now you really have to be much better than the other guy, because whoever recruited the other guy is going to have a better chance for him to get a shot, right? So, and that was always a real thing in football. And now the only difference is we're paying this guy. We've agreed to pay this guy, and this guy is going to get. And UConn is a great example of this. We paid our quarterback. Okay, he was not as good as the guy who was the backup. The backup ended up being better. He ended up being the starter, and we got a 9-4 record or whatever it was. But we paid a guy, and that guy did not end up being as good as the guy who was unpaid.
But he got more opportunities to play than Jolton Joe did.
I think we're all missing the boat here right now. Basically, this is a conglomerate of people that we could all get together and become high school agents.
Yeah.
Basically, take your law degree. You get all the written work. I'll hang around the Pop Warner fields, and I'll start looking at these kids in 4th, 5th, 6th grade. I mean, Mikey could be the liaison between the school and the player, you know. And Steve, I don't know what you can do, Steve, but you can come along with us for the ride. You're already here.
Yeah, you can drive the bus. But you know, the funny thing about that is all we described is how basketball's worked for the last 30 years.
Yep. AAU.
I mean, everyone was looking for the next Michael Jordan. Everybody was looking for the next Kobe Bryant. Everyone was looking for the next. That's why we all knew who LeBron James was when he was a freshman in high school. Yeah. Whereas the difference, and that's what the thing about football is, other than I think maybe a receiver or somebody like that, like it's very hard most 5-star quarterbacks, which is why if you invest so much in these guys, which is why it's going to be so fun to watch them fail, a lot of these kids flame out.
Yeah.
Because there's something even in the NFL, how many first-round guys completely can't do it because it's something intuitive. It's something, the ability to see it, to be able to get that ball into that spot. And
more of them fail than their successes. More of them fail in the NFL. So it's going to happen all across the board. So now
it's harder too than basketball.
Then how can you commit to a 3-year contract then for that quarterback?
Well, but let me ask you this stupid question. Let's say Michigan comes in, they say, yeah, we'll pay you $6 million, but it's a 1-year deal. Now, if you want to sit there and say maybe the kid's a local Northeastern kid, that's when a UConn or a Syracuse or somebody with maybe not the resources sits there and says, yeah, they're paying you $6 million for one. We'll pay you 15 or 14, but we'll guarantee it for 3 years.
Right.
That to me is what ultimately could eventually happen to where that's how contract negotiations happen in baseball or hockey or basketball. It's, we'll do it a front-ended deal, or you do an Ohtani where it's like, we'll give you $2 million a year, and then 20 years from now, we'll give you the rest of the $700 million. Right. There's a lot of different ways you could do this.
But then does that hurt you in the recruiting aspect? Because even with big NIL money, a quarterback wants to get on the field and play. And now you got a kid committed to a 3-year contract that you're going to have a really hard time not starting him.
Which goes back to the whole thing about the fact that your most important hire is now no longer your head coach. It's your general manager.
Yeah.
It's the guy who evaluates who should we give the money to? Should we give, we just described an NFL deal. We just described, hey, we've got this quarterback. Do we want to commit to him? The Giants basically just ruined their franchise because they gave the money to the quarterback and didn't give it to the running back. And we have video evidence of the guy making the asinine decision.
Right. His kid had the better idea than him.
Yeah, the kid should have been the general manager.
That's right, Jaden Daniels. I mean, it was just,
Mike, it's draft the guy that will ultimately lead your competitor to the NFC Championship game.
You know what my kid taught me about evaluating players? All you have to do is go on college football and see what they're rated by EA Sports. Yes. And the funny part is, and they update it throughout the season, right? So I said to him, I said, okay. I said, we were in a car, we're driving he's 9 years old, and him and his buddy are both quarterbacks. We were driving to quarterback training him, and me and the other dad are sitting up. I said, who should be the number 1 pick? And they both immediately said Travis Hunter. And I said, well, why? Because I wanted the other fathers to realize why they said it, because I know, because I see him playing the whole time. I said, why should Travis Hunter be the number 1 pick? He's a 99 rated player. He's the only 99 rated player.
And your son has just been hired as the GM of the Jets. Yeah. So,
and he'll do a better job, most likely.
Yeah. Because that's how the Jets, their billionaire owner, let their son pick because of Madden numbers.
Pretty much. Mike, I had wanted to ask you, because you're there, what is your feel on the Lakers and the Mavericks with the trade that happened? Howard, what's the temperature like in LA now that Luka's there? And did the Lakers just pull a fast one on Dallas?
The Lakers believe that they have continued their lineage of having an A-level player that goes back to Wilt, that goes to Kareem, that goes to Magic, that goes to Kobe, that goes to Shaq, that goes to LeBron.
Right.
There was a big article out here. Are the Lakers the smartest NBA team or just the luckiest? Right. Because they literally have kept their lineage. It's amazing. 2 weeks ago, the Lakers looked like a dead franchise.
Yeah.
The Lakers look like a team where it was like, oh, well, LeBron's got another year or two. AD's not the guy. He's injury prone. They're going to have to build up capital. They're going to have to go after a free agent. And so maybe the Lakers will have a 5-year stretch of that period between Kobe retiring and getting LeBron, where they just became like a team that was fighting for the 8th spot. Then all of a sudden you get a text on a Saturday night where that said that basically they just traded an injury-prone center to the Dallas Mavericks because the Dallas Mavericks wanted to get rid of a younger player because he was injury-prone, even though they just traded a guy who was injury-prone. So ultimately, what is the temperature in Los Angeles? They're sitting there going, the Lakers just did what the Lakers always do. Find a way to have a face of a franchise that ultimately could carry them into the next decade.
Yeah, with Luka. And the Mavericks people are protesting. They're throwing people out of games. The fans who bring signs. I think that's absolutely hysterical.
And they brought in Anthony Davis in the second game back. He rolled his ankle or whatever the hell he did to his foot. He's out like a month.
That's why it was the biggest joke when they sat there and they said, oh, we can't trust Luka. And I'm like, have you ever watched Anthony Davis play basketball?
Street clothes. Remember Charles Barkley? Street clothes.
Yeah. The funny thing about the Lakers, and they are, if you want to talk about what LA sports is, there's 3 entities in LA sports that the locals really look at as pure LA. The Dodgers, USC football, and the Lakers. Those are the ones. Everyone else is just kind of, they have their little niches and all that kind of stuff. But those 3 are the ones that represent Los Angeles. And the thing about the people in Los Angeles, they sit there and they look at their teams as a representation of them, which is, this is a town of transplants. This is a town of people that come here in order to use the resources of the entertainment industry and all that kind of stuff to make their millions. And so basically that's why they've always said it doesn't matter if we draft them. We'll go get a Shaq. We'll go get a Wilt. We'll go get a Kareem. We'll go get an Ohtani. We'll go get a Freeman. We'll go get a whomever. That's what Los Angeles is. And so for them to go get a Luka, it's almost like, I can't believe they just did it again. Because that's it. Literally, when I read the text, I was like, first off, I thought they were kidding.
I did too.
Then when I found out it was real, I was like, oh my God, they did it again.
They pulled it off.
Amazing.
The last thing I wanted to ask, the Jets made the unsurprising decision to let Aaron Rodgers walk. Do you see him playing next year? And where do you see him playing next year? Michael?
Are you saying this because I'm a Steeler fan and you're trying to create bad mojo? Because that's the team that everyone sits there and says would fit. Because I think Mike Tomlin has about 3 years left. He's going to ride the defensive players that he has, the core guys, and I don't think that he necessarily. I would say you ride with Justin Fields, but I think there's a part of him that if Aaron Rodgers can prove to him that he has some mobility left, because that's the big thing with Aaron Rodgers is the fact that he is not the player he was 5 to 10 years ago, especially after the Achilles injury.
Right.
I hope it's not the Steelers. I could see a team. The only reason I was about to say the Raiders, but I think Tom Brady might actually give them brains.
Yes. He's
I don't know. I mean, obviously, think of a franchise that believes that it's close and that Aaron Rodgers would want to play for.
Yeah.
I mean, would the 49ers want him because they don't want to give the money to Purdy?
Yep.
I mean, he's a local kid. He's a Northern California kid. So is that a place he'd go to? I don't know. You have Dak in Dallas, but that seems like a very Jerry Jones type move. I don't know. I mean, the Saints, maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of those type of teams. It really comes down, does Aaron Rodgers still want to play?
That's what I'm saying.
Think that he's got his money. He's got his place. He's got his place in Canton. I mean, obviously I've never met the man, but it doesn't seem like he truly has. He's not a Tom Brady who literally the only reason why he stopped playing was because God visited him and said, "Stop! You're making a mockery of me."
Well, and the divorce.
And a jiu-jitsu instructor doing something. But I mean, ultimately, though, it just very much screams like something that Mike Tomlin would do to bring in competition.
Would you be happier with Rodgers or if they kept Russell Wilson, or you think Fields is their best option?
Fields. The other
100%.
two can be shot into the sun.
If I'm a GM, he's poison to me. I'd stay away from him. Like you said, he's disinterested. He's injured now, and he has no mobility. I don't care what you'd have to have a Fort Knox around him for offensive line to give him the time he needs to get the ball off now. So to me, it's poison, and he's going to come in there with an attitude. He's going to infect your younger players with a shit attitude.
And on top of that, he doesn't want to be there for OTAs. He doesn't want to, I mean, he'll figure out he's going to go on a retreat somewhere in Guadalajara where he doesn't speak for 2.5 weeks. I mean, he's going to figure out a new religion that he has to go visit in India. He's going to do something non-football related to complete and miss and not get connection with the players and not do anything. If you want to talk about how sometimes the NFL prognosticators jump the gun, there was a time when there was an actual debate of who was the actual GOAT, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady.
Yeah, there was.
Let's all remember how stupid we used to be.
There was back in it was 2020, I think, when Rodgers won the MVP and Brady sent him packing in the NFC Championship. Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well, that's because they chase talent. That's what they chase. They chase talent. But Rodgers is, when you watch him throw the ball and you watch how he throws the ball, when he's on fire, it looks phenomenal. So
he had decent numbers this year too.
I think if he went to the right team, he would be fine. He can't go to a team that needs help in any capacity. He's got to go.
Yeah, he needs to go to the 94 49ers.
Yeah, like Deion.
He needs to go to the 91 Washington Redskins. He needs to play behind the Hogs.
That's already done. Just needs a quarterback. A team that just needs a quarterback. Everything else is good.
Right. Right.
And everything else.
Mike, I just wanted to ask you quickly about UConn basketball. The men lost to Seton Hall. The major upset. The women go and beat South Carolina. What are your thoughts on both teams and the direction they're going to go the rest of the season and hopefully the NCAA tournament?
if UConn women play the 5 players that they intended to play, they can win a national championship. That's what you saw yesterday. When injuries hit, which they have over the last couple years, that's when they struggle. If the team that Gino recruited plays in the tournament and stays healthy, they could absolutely win a championship. The men, I think I was actually liking how this team was playing until the injury bug hit them. And obviously, Big East basketball, even last year, Big East road games were something that was hard on them. So it's again, the NCAA tournament is such a crapshoot. They've got a little bit of time to get together, but it's very, very hard to replace 2 lottery picks. And not, I mean, no one does that. No, I mean, winning back. We're so spoiled that we should be good for the next 20 years.
Yeah, I know.
Anything that happens to UConn basketball over the next 20 years, we should be good. We've won 6 titles. We won 2 back-to-back. We've solidified ourselves as quote-unquote blue bloods. There's nothing that we need to worry about, but we're still just, we're upset off a bad loss against Seton Hall. Trust me, I was upset as well.
Voice of reason.
Yeah, I just want to ask a question, totally not related to sports. So, Mike, you're in LA.
Yes.
The fires, they're all out. And then number 2, were you near any of that? Do you have a residence near there?
That's a good question.
1, yes, they're all out. 2, yes, I was not near the Palisades one. If I had a place in the Palisades, I'd be too wealthy to talk to any of you. The one that was near Altadena was maybe about 20 minutes away. So, you want to talk about, I mean, that night, literally there were 100-mile-per-hour winds and power was out. It was a very scary night. It's something to where we've all known somebody that has been affected by it. I have people who I have close to who've had their homes burned down. A lot of them did not have insurance because they couldn't get insurance. There's going to be some interesting things happening in those areas over the next 5 some odd years, because some people are going to have the money to just clear up, build it up again, all that kind of good stuff. And then some other people it's going to be the biggest real estate grab in the last 100 years, because if you've ever been to the Pacific Palisades, it's some of the most beautiful. I mean, you're looking over the Pacific Ocean. It's in basically that west. It's Bel Air, Brentwood, Beverly Hills, Pacific Palisades. That whole area is right next to each other with some of the most expensive real estate on the planet. That's why they were able to put together in 2 weeks a concert in 2 different places, because essentially the music industry is essentially located in that neighborhood. So, I'm safe. Nothing happened in terms of my domicile. But yeah, it's something to where it was a scary couple nights. And now it's really coming down to how quickly can they rebuild? How will they rebuild? Because I think that it's the fires aren't going anywhere. If you build houses into the hills, and keep spreading out this metro region that's upwards of 20 million people, you're going into areas to where those fires have been going on for a lot of years. And so you have to build your house a certain way.
And that's
so those will be the decisions moving forward that have to happen. But
how have are there people on the ground that are helping with the reconciling as far as insurance coverage? Or I know the state has coverage for non-insured, and I guess that the insurance companies are going to actually put into that fund. They're required to dump so much money in, but are things moving? I know I see a lot of news stories, and they say there's a lot of red tape to go through to get permits and to get cleanup and to get everything else going.
The people with money and the people with plans are moving forward very fast. If you have to rely on somebody else, it's going very slowly. Yeah. So ultimately, I know of people that literally they built their house 25 years ago. They still have the plans. They have the money. They're going to self-insure. They literally have the construction going and they'll be in their house probably within 12 to 18 months.
Wow.
And there's other people that are still not there and they're waiting for, the lots to be clear and go from there. And now the only thing is, you talk about red tape. That's where, obviously, the first thing that happened was the governor, Gavin Newsom, basically said, hey, I'm going to waive all the red tape, which begs to speak, why didn't you just waive the red tape all the time? Yeah. But fundamentally, it really just comes down to, will they let them build as they did before? Because there are ways to build your house to where it's not as prone to being, because I read this article where they talked to a fire expert and they go, well, the problem wasn't that the fire started. The problem was that the fire burned down houses. So we're not going to stop fire. Fire's been here for forever. What we need to do is make houses better equipped to withstand the fires. So right. There's ways to do that. There's, there's put it on a concrete slab, make sure that it's sealed, make sure that you have stone shinglings instead of wood, things like that. But that's going to take, if somebody sits there and says, well, I don't want any of that, then your two choices are, one, self-insure, which means if you're a billionaire and if your house burns down, oh, well, I'll build another one. I don't care. Or two, then you can't build your house. Yeah. So that's going to be the tug of war moving forward.
And that's why they can't get insurance, is what
people
you're saying.
probably can't afford that kind of build out too. So that's, you're going to see you're right. You're going to see some quick turnover and a lot of sales, I bet you. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of people are literally the real estate speculators are already coming in. They're sitting there going, hey, we'll give you X if you just leave right now and we'll take care of it.
Right. Yeah. Hey, will some of the Iranian Sesame Street money be coming to you guys out there in LA?
Possibly. You never know. Obviously we could build the Palisades will just all be Elon Musk's kids. That's all it'll just be all of his kids. It'll just be a compound where he'll just fire rockets. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a wonderful time.
He's fornicating like a bastard, so you're going to be able to go up and down that coast.
He'll rebuild the Palisades by the end of the month, and February is a short month.
Can you buy a property in LA for me, and then I can open my doggy daycare there?
Do you realize how much a property in Los Angeles would?
Steve doesn't realize how much it costs to go in business. He just thinks you open a door and the dogs will come. He's the Kevin Costner of dogs.
They will come. They will come.
Yeah.
I mean, just so you know, Steve, if have some fun.
Yeah.
Look at Brentwood real estate. Look at Pasadena real estate, and look at these houses that, if they were in upstate New York, would be $150,000. In Southern California, are $2.5 million.
Oh, okay.
Like to live in some of these houses that literally were built for middle class people back in the 1940s and 50s. Minimum, you're dealing probably about $1.5 million.
Wow. Okay.
So just to ask me to whip out the gold bars and go buy some real estate in Los Angeles, that's a big ask. UConn would have its on-campus stadium if I had Pacific Palisades money.
It's pocket change for a comedian. Come on, we all know that.
Oh, of course. That's $1,200 you make up in upstate New York playing a weekend. Yeah.
Absolutely. Three shows.
Yeah, 2 shows. Yeah, absolutely. Thursday to Sunday. I'll make it. Sure. I'll have a beachfront place in Malibu, $20 million. I'll sell T-shirts. That's the key. With the merch sales, I'll be able to afford the Malibu place.
Merch sales in comedy are huge.
Yeah, I'll make sure I have a T-shirt. Have a link to my special. Yeah, I'll make that Malibu money in 2 seconds.
That's great.
Dave, I'll give you the last word. The UConn men, the UConn women. We lost to Seton Hall. We beat South Carolina. What do you see for the rest of the way?
The UConn women impressed me yesterday. I was impressed.
Even though Paige didn't play great.
Yeah, but the other girls stepped up. So I think the UConn women are going to have a chance. I wasn't that sure, but now after watching that game, I think anyone can lose at any time, but they're going to have a chance to be able to make a run to win the championship. There's no doubt. The men, I'm kind of, I don't know. I thought when McNeely came back and he dropped 38 points, I thought, okay, we're gonna roll now, and that isn't the case. I don't know. I think they've got to get out of the Caravan scoring, trying to make even though he scored 18, it's just, I don't know. Like, figure out a way to get McNeely.
He's not a number one. Yeah,
McNeely needs to score 25 to me. Yeah. I mean, like, and I don't know. If the guy, he's a lottery pick, he's gone after this year.
He is. Yeah, him and Caravan.
Ride the lottery pick. I mean, Duke is doing that.
Yeah,
Duke is riding Cooper Flag like. I mean, he's running like
that's what he's getting paid for.
He's the forward point for them. He's a point guard and forward at the same. Like he does everything. So
he's getting paid well enough to do it too.
He's paid. What does McNeely get paid, by the way? I'm not sure about the men. I am really not sure how far.
I don't know. I don't know either.
I mean, listen, Hurley's produced magic. He's produced magic, so I wouldn't count him out. But I'm not too keen on it. But what are they paying McNeely? Do you know?
I do not know. I do not know. I would have to.
What good are you? You don't know. What are you talking about? I thought you were locked in on that. I thought you were part of the negotiations.
The football guys, I know. I don't know the basketball.
Well, ask one of the football guys to go ask him how much he gets paid. We'll do you could do a game show. It's like Price is Right. You can have him play a game, and then you can say, how much did this guy cost? And then you just sit there, and if you're $1 over, then he has to go to Seton Hall.
Well, they paid $200K last year for the guy from Rutgers, and that turned out to be a great move.
Yeah, I know.
He ended up playing really
well.
That's
it. That's a bargain.
That was a bargain, and he played great. But I don't know what they paid for these other guys this year. I really don't know.
Yeah, we got to. I'll find out.
Rutgers was super salty, and I'm in New Jersey, and some of the guys I'm friends with, they were super salty when we took.
Rutgers got a good recruiting class, so they got some of that. They got some of that stereos fall off a truck money to go towards those players.
That's right. Harper, I think they got him.
I was going to say, Mike, I'm sorry I didn't run into you in the comedy world there. I would have loved to have you in my place. I know that besides comedy, we could have talked sports too. So it was a pleasure talking to you.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure talking to all you guys. Great catching up. It's a wonderful show. And God bless all you. And
you bring him to the Stanley, Frank. I'm telling you. Bring Mike into the Stanley, and then we'll do the doggy daycare. We're set.
Well, Mike, I think Mike should be doing some sports radio hosted out there on the West Coast.
He had his own show in Pittsburgh.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Yeah, he had his own show in Pittsburgh.
Is that where you were from originally, Pittsburgh? Is
yes.
He's got a podcast. He's
came and grabbed you all the way from Pittsburgh.
Oh, Hudson. Yeah, Hudson went out to Pittsburgh and just talked about the beautiful sun-drenched beaches of Storrs, Connecticut.
Oh, well,
I had Hudson on my podcast
I know you
a week or two ago.
Yes,
man, he's great. He was great. He was great to talk to.
Well, we have to thank our sponsor at 42nd Brew Co., Steve Darby, friend, teammate. 42nd Brew Co. down in Kingston, Massachusetts. They have a variety of pilsners, ales, and lagers, a wonderful tasting room, an incredible ambiance. If you're looking for something to do, go there over the weekend. They have live bands, and we love Steve Darby.
Hey, Steve, I bought $1,000 worth of beer from him. You think you could throw me a shirt or something?
Yeah, you want some merch? Yeah, sure.
Why not? I still got the beer in my cooler.
No, it's sold like hotcakes. I love
hotcakes.
Yeah. So thank you, Mike Sasson, the man, the comedian, incredible takes, the podcast. He's got a podcast of his own. Make sure you check it out. What's the name?
Mike and Ron here to help. And if you're in the Los Angeles area this Friday, I'll be at the Comedy Chateau and also at the Fourth Wall Comedy Cafe right on Hollywood Boulevard. So come out and see me. Follow me on @Mike Sasson. And again, looking forward to we're getting into March Madness. gonna be hopefully see another championship by either the men or the women, or hopefully both. So we're looking forward to that.
We'll make sure to put that in the show notes to let everyone know, because we get such large viewership.
I'm sure there's a lot of people in Worcester that will be in that'll be in Los Angeles this weekend who will love to attend.
And the voice of reason, Frank Cristiano, the coach David Schumann. I am Steve Cully, the best podcast host in the universe. This has been 97.9 Unity Radio, Moneyline. Remember, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Take 2 oranges, throw them right back at life.